Okay, so we are dealing with the Morning Light today, and they are explicitly just magic
You're not
Scientology.
Death.
Yeah, they absolutely
When
are.
my death comes, he will be
And
And this
tall,
lady is
his
goth as hell.
eyes
yeah,
flashing
well,
like
I
winter
mean,
ice.
she's
Beautiful.
obviously like
Oh,
trying to be
fuck, I hate this
or
forest.
designed to be
There's no
like a
peace.
stereotypical
It's as
cult
loud as those
recruit,
strip clubs
but
Adrian dragged us around to in
cult
Bucharest.
the thing about like
Meat
I
markets
don't know,
filled
unless
with
you have anything
lost
else
souls.
interesting to bring up, and we'll see
I
this
wish I
as we
had
go
never
forward.
come out here.
Talking about cults
I
is
wished I
great
was
because I
dead.
can do everything from
I will be,
Literal
if
Harry
I go
Potter
back.
cultists to ancient
Adrian will
Chinese
cut his
history.
initials in my
But I'll
neck.
start with the good stuff.
Can we
Uh,
can we talk about the Final
Fucking
Fantasy
cozy.
house?
I think that it's the same.
I
No, the
lost some things.
uh, no, they that
Things I was supposed to
those aren't the
drive
same
back to the
people, but
city.
like it's the same kind of thing.
I don't know what.
So
I didn't
like, and I
ask.
like you know,
Yeah, no, go
And I
go,
don't
go
care.
ahead. We'll
Those
we'll have stuff
disgusting
about the
pigmen
Romani
took
next
whatever it
episode, and
was.
later this episode
Away into
we
the
will
fucking forest.
run into basically
It'll
the
probably
the
kill
people from
them.
Deliverance.
Messily. Nothing the morning light touches has a beautiful death. That was my mistake. I believed their shit.
cults are fucked. Cults are fucked
Adrian
up.
said, "You want to see the
Yeah,
real face
like
of the night?"
and it's also the
The
thing about
others,
cults is
poor
that
Rada,
people
those
tend to
silly
think of
French
them in
girls and her
terms of
boyfriend were too
well,
smashed to argue.
Scientology or Warning
He would have
Light,
forced them
or
if
they
they
think
had.
of them as
Like,
Satan, as like satanic
he forced
sacrificing
me.
babies. And
He's
there are
nothing.
cults that look like
No one.
Scientology,
Just a
obviously.
bully with a razor blade who
There are
can't
cults
even
that look like
drive.
the satanic thing, but they don't really like. There's a Church of Satan, and they're
Just
explicitly
go.
atheists. They just really, really like
Additional
to.
facilities.
They try to cause problems for theists. But statistically, most cults in the U.S., for instance, are Christian. Or they just practice a version of Christianity that just so happens to revolve around some charismatic leader who says that he knows, it's usually a he, but not always, knows everything about how the secret ways of the world, who has a bunch of weird, so one of the things that's worth noting about cults, and one of the ways that cults get into people's heads is that if you read about them, you will notice they believe the most ridiculous garbage. That is intentional. That's how they design that's how cults tend to evolve. Because if they can get someone to buy into the cult, they can buy into this ridiculous stuff that's clearly untrue, that will have outsiders make fun of them if they try to argue it and convert them in that way or talk about it even. They'll just be made fun of. They'll be pushed back. And by buying into that, you separate yourself from the rest of everyone else. It helps cult leaders, whether it's the cult leader themselves or if it's a big cult, people lower down, isolate you from everyone else who believes more rational shit. And that's how they isolate you and convince you to do whatever it is that they want. And you can get God, we were talking about Snape Wives. For those of you who have never heard of it, that was a cult that evolved on the internet about, I think, 20 years ago-ish, of people who believed that Severus Snape, as in from Harry Potter, was actually a sort of multi-dimensional deity who communed with them and married them supernaturally, married members of this cult. And there were dozens of these people, and this whole community, and it just melted down in the most, quite, not literally violently, but it just blew up. And you can find a lot of evidence scattered around the internet about how the Snape Wives work. If you've ever heard of our hobby drama, they had a really good write-up on the Snape Wives recently, and that is a good subreddit for basically history, and it's just not standard history with a capital H people think of.
Cultural history,
pretty much. And there's also, you mentioned the Final Fantasy house. I know I've heard of it. I know that that's a thing, but I don't remember anything about it.
Oh, I haven't read it because I took one look at it and I said, do I really want to spend a couple hours reading about people who, if I saw them in person, I would want to just wedgie? And I say that as a fellow nerd. I would wedgie these people. These are absolutely some of the most tedious dorks. Which is no wonder they got caught up in a cult.
Well, thing is, that's not how cults recruit. That's actually something that you talk to people, experts on cults, they will tell you not to say that shit. Because cults do not recruit based on... They recruit entirely based on emotion, effectively. On how a person's doing emotionally, rather than how rational they are or are not. And you can find, you can find intelligent, rational people who get sucked into these things because the cult hits them at the right emotional point. And that's how, you can get normal people to turn into monsters because they've been isolated and twisted by contact with very dangerous people. And like I said, cult beliefs are inherently ridiculous. That doesn't mean that the things that they do can't be very, very dangerous for them and the people around them.
Well, I'm aware of that bit. Cults are in fact dangerous, and if anybody says they've got like the word of God known only to me, you stay away from that person.
Yeah. Even if they're offering you a set emotional fulfillment, even if people don't go to this sort of thing because they 100% buy into it, but because they feel that they need some kind of support or something. Oh look, Orochi.
Yeah, Orochi's big in this forest. There's a couple of Orochi outposts and stuff. And of course they're all dead, because they're Orochi.
Kind of. Orochi really do embody capitalism, in that the moment they face something they can't handle, they fall apart. Politics. But, yeah, it is really funny to just see how constantly the Orochi fuck up for something that's, for an organization that's supposed to be, able to go toe-to-toe with ancient conspiracies.
Well, we'll learn why they're so inherently powerful later.
I mean, yeah, there's
that is a Tokyo spoiler.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of Orochi in Tokyo, and you meet their higher ups, and once you meet their higher ups, you go, oh, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
So I think we had that discussion in the Egypt levels. We mentioned cults, and we talked about how yes, there are Jewish cults, you just don't see them because they're not as visible.
Yeah, they're not particularly common, but there's a few. They are mostly concentrated in a few parts of the world, and because we're talking about Judaism here, they very rarely recruit. And those that do recruit are like pop culture Judaism. That usually, though not always, have very little to do with actual Judaism, or usually have very few Jewish members. So, well, and there are exceptions, but you get either.
Well, I was gonna say a religion that encourages its members to rationally and reasonably debate things.
Yeah.
Generally is probably more is less tempted to form a cult because the average member is trained to say, no, that's not what it says.
Mm-hmm.
That's obvious. You're obviously fucking with me.
You tend to get and a lot of these things kind of straddle the line where they have some of the characteristics. Like on the East Coast, what there are several communities that are that definitely started life as cults, but within the Jewish community all the way back to Europe hundreds of years ago. And these days, and in the spirit of fairness, it's worth noting that they didn't form the same way as most cults usually do. They usually formed around like people who able theologians and famous rabbis, rather than people who are trading on actual achievements rather than pure charisma. but they still meet it. They still meet some of the criteria, and now
I mean,
they've been
to be fair, your particular sect was excommunicated, so they are, by the definition of other Jews, they are a cult.
by the definition of one tiny group of Jews, everyone else makes fun of. Yeah,
Yes,
that board
but
of rabbis.
you get to tell people that now, though.
Yeah,
You get
it
to tell.
is.
You get to tell.
Yeah, I am a
I'm
practicing
technically
heretic.
in a cult.
Yeah,
I technically am in a cult.
yeah. I can't. I really shouldn't be calling them cult. That's not really true. It straddles the line. There's a lot of similarities there, and there are a lot of problems with those communities, but they aren't what people think of. They don't look like what you think of when you think of a cult, even if you know, whether like and when you actually know what cults are and how they work. So I'll back off.
Didn't we on SA? We had a ultra orthodox Jew who was posting about how he was in the community and didn't want anyone to know that he had signed on to SA.
Yeah.
And he was posting about how awful everything was in his little Hasidic community. And then he suddenly stopped posting, and from the assumption we had, it was that the people in his community found out about it, and he was either excommunicated or subsumed back into the fold. I remember because there was an Ask Tell about it.
It's very.
It's hard to talk. It's hard to talk about these things.
Yeah.
It's easy for me because I'm not Jewish and also an atheist, but I imagine it is hard for you because you are. I'm assuming not. You are religiously Jewish as well as.
More or less, I'm loosely religiously Jewish, but I do identify with the culture as a whole. So.
Well, I was saying it's like the old joke, a Jew and a rabbi get into an argument about the nature of God, and the Jew declares that he's, I'm gonna become an atheist, and then they end their argument. And he says, "So see you next Saturday, Father. See you next." I know Father isn't the right term, but it's that sort of. It's entirely possible to be atheist and Jewish.
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
there are a large number of Jewish atheists.
There's a
and I was reading something. I was reading something recently that was talking about how that's entirely due to Judaism had an Enlightenment movement in the late 18th, early 19th centuries.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there, and that's part. I mentioned. We talked about Hasidim. They came a lot of that was born out of the run up to that movement or reaction to it. Usually run up to it. So there's a lot of theological upset at this point, and there's a lot that was done. I don't know. I feel try not right now things are really politically tense. There's a lot of anti-Semitism on the rise, so I'm always, while I do want to be honest and fair about this sort of thing, also I'm trying not to. You don't want
to give people the excuse.
Yeah, I don't want to give people the excuse. People absolutely will just take the one thing that you implied and run with it. It's not going to happen.
Especially if you're a member of that community.
Yeah.
You got to circle the wagons at times like this.
You have to balance that with not letting abuses slide within the community as well. Because that a danger from without does not mean people can't.
Does not remove danger from within.
Sort of it's a huge a lot of, and we've talked about in this LP back in Egypt a lot how historical definition of cult's so different, but hedonistic.
I can't remember. Did we mention that Mel Brooks is making History of the World Part 2?
I didn't hear that, actually. I think...
Yes, it's on one of the streaming services. He basically said, yeah, I'm making a new movie. It's History of the World Part 2. It's finally time. It's got Seth Rogen as Moses, so I'm not certain about how good it's going to be. But, I mean,
God, that's
That could either be really good or really bad because he can do both.
wow. That was a fast clock. A fast descent, rather.
Yeah. No, my dad loves Mel Brooks movies. The whole family does. We always quote Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, Young Frankenstein's great. That's Mel Brooks is.
But History of the World Part 1 was one of his weaker films, I felt. Like it's very much just the thing everyone remembers from it is maybe the Last Supper where he's the waiter and uh the Inquisition song, and that's all anyone remembers.
The
Oh, and
15.
peasants! I love peasants! Pull!
Yeah?
Yeah, or the only thing I remember is I think I saw it when I was too young. I swear I've seen it, but I don't remember anything about it. Like, I remember the 15 dropping one tablet. No, 10 commandments. And
10!
that's it.
These 15!
15.
10! 10 commandments!
Forgot to bring the bullets. Bang, bang.
We do a good deed here,
I'm
objectively
no
a good
danger.
deed, in that we
Not
hack
to you.
in this mission, in that we
And I
hack
can't hurt
into
myself from smoking marijuana.
the Morning Light's files
Did
and
you hear that?
close her file, meaning they will stop harassing her.
All I want is to finish this joint.
Of course, to
Paint
figure
my
that out, you
nails
have to
one
go
last
online to a
time, and
website,
slip into
which I
the
can't
warm
capture
corner.
recordings of. Well, I
Simply
could, but it would
out of the
be a
corner
big
of my
hassle,
eye
and I'd
keeps
have to
wrecking my
pay my
shit.
editor more to do video
Why don't
editing.
they just come out and finish it?
As it stands, I'm
I'm not
just paying him
scared.
to sync our voices and cut them.
Adrian must have sent someone to find me. I knew it. It takes Morning Light to be this much of an asshole. Always mind games. Until you're ready to ask for the abuse.
Yep, definitely a
And say,
cult.
thank you so much after.
By the way,
I
we
know you
get
don't
to
want to
see
save
part of
me.
Morning Light after
That's
Tokyo.
fine.
It's
I wouldn't either.
it's real fucked up.
I don't even want
Yeah.
to be saved, except you can't let me go out like this. Like in some stupid slasher movie. It's so fake. I don't want to go to my death faking it. I don't want to go to my death with bad hair. Fuck. You're alive. You wouldn't understand.
I mean, we died. But if you're talking about that, we died plenty. Like, maybe,
Yeah, but we haven't perma-died and gone to our afterlife reward.
yeah, that's fair.
The guy is actually over in the ghoul area. I just kind of derp around trying to remember if I can figure out where he's supposed to be. I do find him, but
What do you want?
now I remember. There's a little alcove over there with a single ghoul. But they don't, because it's an investigation mission, they don't tell you where anything is.
I wish they did. Investigation.
There's a
missions.
lot to be said for a game that does not signpost things and do a go here, do this.
But
But they
There's-
could use a little better of a hint system.
there's a reason the games have gone away from that. And there's a lot of
And now I'm going to go pause and look up what to do on my phone. And it turns out that what we have to do is go back to London.
right. I remember this.
Because there is a Join Morning Light Pavilion in London, and we hack into their system there.
I think I remember this actually. I'll save commentary for when we get there, but I think I remember this mission. Oh, and obstructive persons. Just noticed that's the name of the quest. That's a Scientology thing, right there. Like straight out of that's what they call specific enemies of Scientology. So,
Yeah, I have, because it's been so long, I have let my subscription lapse, so things cost stuff now.
and Oh well, it's
It takes a while to load this scene for some reason. I remember sitting there going, "Wow, that's a long time to load."
yeah, it
As
really
you can
is.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was gonna get disconnected, but no, it loads. It just takes forever.
I do love how this game just goes. Okay, so we assume that most players are going to be Templars, so let's make London the most interesting hub. And let's just give a couple of like odd shops in New York and just leave Seoul hanging. There's nothing there. Nobody cares. Go away.
Back when this had a thread on something awful, someone pointed out that Seoul is entirely uh,
You
gated
come to the
off.
right place.
Like you cannot interact with the wider city in any way, because the
Welcome
dragon
to
does
the
not
Morning Light
want you
quiz. The
to do
questions are
anything.
designed to let's analyze your true being.
Yeah,
Please answer as openly as you can. Let's find out who you really are.
it doesn't matter though. They'll tell you, you know.
And now we have to go to the besieged farmlands and talk to this fellow, and he'll give us a thing. He'll give us a. Go ahead.
If I remember right, there's a way that you can get into those files and find your own file
You
in
can.
Rhineland.
You can find your own file. Yes.
I remember it was like it was very generic for the most part, but it listed my favorite food as tacos. And I was
Yes,
offended. I
because tacos are one of the best regenerative healing things in the game,
yeah,
and you can only get them at the taco stand in New York, I think.
like it's not like I'm just sitting here. It's not that I don't like tacos. I just don't care for like corn tortillas. So I'm just like slightly offended.
If you leave, you're on the list. It's automatic. The way they see it, the way their lawyers see it, you sign up for life. Once you break that contract, you're fair game. Follow you, trick you, sue you, lie to others, whatever it takes to discredit anything you might say.
Yeah. So, yeah. Again, it's literally just
I
Scientology.
wouldn't
Yeah.
have said a fucking word. I just wanted my life back.
My dad watched
I
this
can't afford to let people walk away.
program on
It's too much to hide.
Scientology and was
And so they follow you,
he's been
fuck
talking
with
about it
you,
constantly,
hunt,
and it
share
was
the press.
apparently
And now,
like they have a
what's your
town
story?
in Florida that
I
is
fight
100%
back whether
Scientology owned,
Mhm.
I don't pretend to have
and
gotten anywhere
they
close
brought
to the top.
someone
I
there
mean, you know how
who
many
was a
levels there are.
Scientology, like
I mean, more than I can
someone who
count.
left, and
But I can
apparently they
climb
pulled
up
out a
far enough to
30-year-old
realize it was time to walk away. They call me a thief.
what are those notices
But the
called? You
files
must
I took were
restraining
insurance,
order.
because
You
I
must be
knew there
this
was
far
more
away from a
somewhere.
Scientologist
The higher I
property,
climbed,
and he
the
was in the
easier
middle
it
of a
got.
public
It was
park,
emptier too, more capable of anything.
just
Maybe that's
absolutely
just it.
dog shit
That's the whole
people.
fucking program. What they work towards. What they
Their
accomplish.
leadership, at least. I feel
Yeah.
bad for the
You
average
really want
rank
to
and
know what's
file.
on the files
I
they
mean,
took?
yeah.
I got no fucking clue. Isn't that great? Could be a recipe for lemon pie for all I know. It's probably not a recipe for lemon pie. Whatever it is, it's pissing them off that I got it. And it's giving me some leverage.
Quick access inventory
I'm way
updated.
behind some password. At least, I think it's important. I don't know. I don't know what it is, or what it says, or how to open it. I just know it's the only ammunition I got.
I'm trying to think. I know that like there have been cults historically. I just can't think of what they are out of the off the top of my head. Like there have been The thing about history and cults is that the difference between a cult and a genuine mass religious movement is very narrow once you get enough people in. But you get the Taiping Rebellion, which
Yeah.
has a lot of it has a lot of, if not all of the like qualifiers of a cult within its like religious structure, within the immediate circle of the what's his name? The,
Oh,
like,
here's this is important. Cassandra King. She was the one in New England who took the sword.
oh yeah. Um
She is apparently in Scotland. Mischievous face.
yeah. She's still around doing her own thing.
I can't see FNF without thinking Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah. I was thinking Friday Night Funkin'. Shit, last scene.
Current arm shotgun. Threat level Q. Emotion will manifest stoic.
Directive. Greatest fear, anarchy. Favorite food, tacos.
And then instead of our handler, it's the Morning Light who email us about it.
Fucking morning light. I think it's like what was do you remember what's the fucking name? I don't think Taiping Emperor is correct. I don't know if he actually counts as an emperor. I'll do that Googling. It's going to bother me until I find it, so
And now our first interaction with the Romani. Who I like these guys. These guys are cool.
mhm.
The Amazing Brothers Blaga.
My brothers and I, we were legends. In the traveling carnival, the Amazing Brothers Blaga. None compared. In the ring, we fight Moroi, we fight Strigoi, we fight Verkolak, we fight Prikolich. Once, for a great show to a dark prince, a sorcerer summoned an archdemon from hell, and we fought that too. We put on a great show. We served the head to the prince on a platter. And then we fought him and all his court to the death. These were glorious times. I am naked without them. They went into the forest without me to fight the wolves, and they did not come back. We are like links in a chain, and when you remove one of them, it was rash, it was stupid. I am mad at them. I should have been there. I only hope at the end they put on a great show worthy of the Amazing Brothers Blaga. One time, the Amazing Brothers Blaga, they fought their own shadows. It was a glorious fight.
Yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah.
Be cautious out
Visual tracking initiated.
But yeah.
Not finding what you're looking for?
No, I was figuring out whether it's interesting enough to bring up. It is. His name is Hong Shuchuan. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Wow, you are getting.
Yeah, I'm getting my ass kicked.
A lot of wool. Yeah, It's an MMO tied to too many people. It happens.
Yep.
But like he was Hong Chuan, Heavenly King. He was like within his inner circle. He had the I have a secret revelation from heaven. I've offered you ways out of the conventional world. He has deep control over his followers. He had lots of sex because that's something a lot of cult leaders do. And then, but once he got away from headquarters, the average rank and file were as likely to be like they just really hated the Qing dynasty, or they were peasants who were desperate, had no other options, and didn't bother believing in it, but we're still fighting for them. It was an entirely different thing. It was too big to be controlled in the same way. Cults tend to really like control, tend to really like having complete control over the lives of the people that are in them, as you saw, and that's like they can't let anyone escape or they will ruin their life. They have to make an example of them. So yeah, cults are weird.
Speaking of Hong, what his name is, I'm not good with Chinese names. Have you ever seen that? Someone once edited a Ben Garrison political cartoon because he did one that was like about chess and Trump in China or something. But someone edited it to be about the Taiping versus Hong Qingshan versus the younger brother of Jesus or whatever.
Yeah.
The Heavenly King. Oh my god, it was so funny. Because only like 6 people got it. Because it was about the Taiping Rebellion. Who the fuck outside of China knows about the Taiping Rebellion? But they had gotten it exactly. Like one of the pieces was like Western influence or something.
Yeah.
Just dumb as hell. It was so funny.
It's finally over.
I mean,
Thanks.
there are plenty
No
of.
offense,
Like,
but let's not do this again.
I'm trying not to think of the actual political cartoons at the time, because there were political cartoons at the time. They were just really, really racist when they were talking about the Taiping Rebellion. I don't think I could.
Well,
find
we're also
anything.
talking about Ben Garrison.
I
who,
mean, yeah, he's the heir to a broad legacy, I guess. Like, I do love those niche names where you're the only one who gets it. And
have you seen the one that's in the? I saw one that was the monkey knife fight from The Simpsons, and it was historians, historians, and historians.
yeah,
And it was titled Histography.
Like, and you get 2 academics in a room with the same subject. Oh, there's a non-zero chance that they will actually start fighting. You will find, it's like, someone will end up flipping a table and shouting about Satan poker sticks. It's just a thing that happens.
Wasn't that what was it on Something Awful? I read the guy who was talking about how he went to a literary conference on Edgar Allan Poe, and he brought up the orangutan. We do not talk about the orangutan.
Yeah, but you can make all the the orangutan is complicated. Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe was a product of his time. There's no real good way to get around that.
It's just one of those academic hot button subjects you don't mention. You don't say, is the orangutan a racist thing, or is it just because he wanted an orangutan in a story?
The answer is probably yes.
So both.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got to talk about. We're going to be seeing a lot of werewolves coming up. So That's something we'll probably talk about at one point. God, you know, I'm waiting for Tokyo because we get to see the corporate headquarters of Orochi. And they are, like, doing some sincerely just capitalism.tech stuff.
This one's unusual in that
Thanks
you
for
actually
getting me
end
out.
up in thing.
That was close.
You just get sent after
We need
people
to
and they
go.
aren't dead yet.
Now.
That's
Well, spoiler alert, this guy ends up turning into a werewolf.
well, I mean, there's a reason I said yeah.
Oh, fuck. My head. What the hell is happening to me?
But yeah, like usually it's they always send you after corpses or quest targets.
Yes, that is true.
It's one or the other. You don't get a lot of rescue missions that actually end up turning into actual rescue missions, even if they go south.
There it is again. Sharp fucking pain. I can't. Make it stop. For the love of God, make it stop.
Oh my god, I finally got to Gondor in Lord of the Rings Online. So, that took a long time. And here we go.
Oh, no, I will not give up. I am a blogger. The fabulous brothers blogger never give up. We fight!
And then you shoot. And okay, so he's shooting lightning now.
I just imagine that's the tone my character would use. Because he's so done with this shit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, of course he shoots lightning.
And he barely qualifies as a mini boss after all that.
Well, of course, you're a bee.
I mean, yeah. Bees are so terrifyingly powerful.
Bees are OP, please nerf.
Like it's and speed reading that Sonic is actually putting in the time and effort to talk about, like reflect on things that he sees, and I don't think the other conspiracies come anywhere close. Like the Illuminati just snark at you, and who knows what the dragon do. Like the dragon just say something pretentious again, because that's all they ever do.
There's a reason I picked Templar when I first played this game. It's because I saw what the other two had to offer and we're like, no?
Oh, yeah. Like, I think, from what I understand, it is pretty lopsided towards Templar as far as the overall count, like, population. Because, you know, people are often fine playing villains, but there are very few, like, outright villain groups in MMOs that people really belong to. Like, even the Horde, it's only a villain because writers took it in that direction. And there's a lot of sympathetic stuff. It's just that the writing is written by the sort of people that got Blizzard sued into the ground, rightfully so. So, you know, I think people just tend to gravitate in MMOs. I think people tend to gravitate towards, like, maybe not the good guys, but people who are at least somewhat sympathetic. And you can't say that about the Illuminati, and you really also can't say that about the dragon.
The dragon have the unfortunate Eastern mysticism thing going,
Yeah,
or at least the Western perception of Eastern mysticism.
they are the Inscrutable Orient as a MMO faction, and it does not do them any favors. It sucks. I've said before, I really don't like the dragon because of that. They're not even awful as a faction. I just think they're borderline, though maybe not 100% racist.
I'm sorry there's not much to talk about right now.
Yes.
There will be once we meet the Deliverance people.
Oh, God, I'm not looking at the fucking... I remember them. What are they called again? Whatever their name is. That's something to ramble about when it comes to, like... tell people history. As somebody who works in the field of mental health, I really don't like them because of one specific character and how the game portrays them. But we'll get to that when we get to that. We'll burn those bridges when we get to them. I do like. I will never, even though I will never really complain about it too much. I will always be amused when games give enemies a rabid title and then have them work in groups against you. That's not how that works. That's not at all how that works.
Additional
Demir.
assignment received. Initializing.
Demir, right.
Gonna have to say, not a fan of the wolf howling in pain sound effect.
Dog sounding unhappy. It sucked.
I'm also really not that much of a fan of people making wolves enemies in games. It just really contributes to the unfortunate stereotype that wolves are inherently, evil and dangerous rather than something we made dogs out of.
Yeah. Weird, like, dog. We have some evidence that dogs basically domesticated themselves. Like they were more involved in the process than we were.
I don't like you.
This one's worth listening to.
Mommy! 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 Intrus! Usurpator!
Lasanaeum Pace. What do you want? We are just poor farmers. We have broken no laws. They are not human.
They make good sausage. Ah, Mummy, that hurt.
We do not speak of sausages in front of strangers. My boy hunts strigoi and shapeshifters, same as you.
Not as tasty as the Blajin or the forest fairies or the...
The Padori do make an excellent stew. And why let it all go to waste? And so? What makes us different from you? We're on the same side in this war. It is humans against the rest of them, the unhumans, the lesser species. Do not judge us. Do not be so sanctimonious. The only difference between us is that they call you hero and they call us murderers. Hypocrites. We do their dirty work and they shake their heads, but they still look the other way and allow us to
Kill. I like to kill. To feel the soft flesh tearing. The warm blood running.
Silvio! Not in front of strangers.
Sorry, Mummy.
You have been a bad boy. Go do your work. Go! You should be thanking us. We are helping, making things easier for all of you. Oh, it is so easy to call us evil, to call us monsters. But you cannot do anything about it. You will not. Your leaders will not. You cannot wash your hands of us. You need us. Your world needs us to do what you cannot do. You need us.
I don't like you.
So yeah, fucking, I really is again speaking as a mental health professional, I really fucking hate how they portray Sylvia. Like, it's not like it's just that stereotype.
It's the B movie horror.
Yeah, the B movie. Certain words that are slurs that can be rolled out to describe that guy. But it's worth, while we're talking about history, it's worth noting you will get, because we're going right through a lot of, there's currently all kinds of debate about all sorts of things around mental health, and you'll hear people talking about, especially an autism epidemic, and they will usually talk about the numbers as if they are rising, and talk about that as an issue and imply that there's something causing it. But the thing about that is that if you, those numbers aren't actually rising. It's just a mixture of like broad pop culture talking all about it and everyone's hearing it, so they think it's everywhere now, and better diagnostic techniques. But if you want to know what it looks like before those diagnostic techniques, then I mean, I really wouldn't use Sylvia as an example because he's very ableist, but an ableist portrayal. That's what those folks ended up doing with their lives. They would usually they'd stay in the house or be kept away from strangers. They would do menial work usually, or specialist work that they were good at, depending on how they particular turned out. They would be treated like family shames, or they would be treated like, eternal children. And that would be, and they just wouldn't have much of an impact on the outside world. People just wouldn't see them, and they'd be kept behind, more or less, usually kept behind closed doors. So, like developmental disabilities, that's how they worked for most human history. That's what happened when someone had one. Either that, or they were depending on it. There were different things that could happen depending on how it worked, but still, it's worth pointing out. That is how that worked, or worked, and still works in a lot of the world too.
I will say, people talking about an autism epidemic. I have autism. I was not diagnosed until I was 22 because they weren't looking for Asperger's in children.
And it doesn't help that autism itself specifically is extremely politicized. And there's a lot of money to be made in diagnoses and a lot of money to be made in fear-mongering. There's immense amounts of fear-mongering. And that's basically, the thing about autism is that it can be very debilitating. And it's very debilitating compared to how common it is, relatively speaking. But it's also a broad condition, and it doesn't define a kid's life necessarily any more than any other mental health condition, just depending on how intense it is. There are plenty of things that are way worse, and there are things that are better, and there are people who deal with it better or worse. And people with autistic people are just people. There's all kinds of complexities around that, but because it is so heavily politicized, people treat it like it's special. People put a lot of emphasis in how they behave towards people, autistic people, and when they're talking about autism, they put a lot of emphasis on whatever it is that they believe about the epidemic rather than the people that they're dealing with, because it's such a politicized issue. It has so much cultural relevance, and it is deeply ironic that it's a condition that often makes people who have it struggle to pick up on social cues, and it's something that defines people's reactions to it are defined by which social cues they're choosing to pick up. If you know it, if you can understand what I'm getting at there. It's like, if I identify as an autistic person specifically. However, there are contexts in which I will identify as a person with autism, or I will identify as being on the spectrum. Those are three different things that mean three different things that are used among three different populations to refer to a condition that makes it hard to tell which of those is appropriate for which population. And using the wrong one can get you yelled at and can get you punished, and like socially speaking. And it's just such a mess.
I'm glad I don't hang out with people because that sounds horrible.
Like it's
I've never gotten I've never gotten yelled at for saying I am autistic.
Yeah, there are people who will start screaming, and specifically because they're so invested in the debate. They want it to be a person with autism, person first language. Have I talked about person first and identity first language?
No.
So
you might as well now, because we're just going to be shooting ghouls the rest of this video.
So it's come to a head within autistic community and community of people who are aligned with autism. But it applies to disability more generally. There's a debate in the disability world on how to refer to disabled people, and there is a significant there are entire political groups that their main focus, the thrust of what they do, is try to convince people to talk about disabled people as a people with disabilities. And they've been quite successful. You'll notice in it's the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. Anything that's produced by just about anything produced by a high level by a company or somebody or a government agency or something will use that structure. And that structure is developed with the idea that they are trying to basically, not to put too fine a point on it, they're trying to separate a person from a disability so that that person doesn't have to be defined by that disability. And it's, it makes an intuitive kind of sense, and there are a lot of people who will swear by it, and there are disabled people who do swear by it as well. But there's also, let me put it this way. You think the whole point of this is to shape how people think about disability, and to shape how people by changing how they refer to it on a basic level. If that means it has to have a measurable effect if it's actually doing anything, right? And that's not a rhetorical question. Go ahead and answer if you have an opinion on that.
I've never really run into it outside of it being I dislike using the term politically correct. I've never run into it outside of it being a thing that you are politically correct supposed to say. I've always referred to myself as I am autistic, because that has pretty much been the overriding one of many disabilities I possess is autism. It is the one that has caused me the most trouble in my life.
And keep in mind, I'm an activist. That's what I do. That's my day job. So I have an experience working with other activists, whether I agree with them or not. So this is something that matters a lot to certain groups of people and doesn't matter at all to others. That said, It's worth noting that the people selling the person first language thing generally not disabled themselves. They're very, very commonly their parents, specifically of disabled people. You have a few disabled people who participate, not many, and you have a few, people who are trying to help, but it's very much dominated and run by parents. And within the disability movement, parents have a very contested reputation. Because when you put a parent in charge of a child, parent tends to make decisions based on, their own experiences, their own knowledge, and their own circumstances. But those circumstances don't necessarily apply to everyone. And you will get parents who will band together with parents who think similarly and try to oppose things on everyone because, as far as they're concerned, people who are not acting like they do are children. So they want to solve it. And you get a lot of you get Autism Speaks, which is, up until recently, was the board of Autism Speaks was entirely parents of autistic people or various, scientific specialists. Those two. No, they're, for an organization founded in, I think the 80s, the first time they put an actual person with autism on the in their management structure was, I think, the early 2000s, and that was John Elder Robinson, who's an activist. He quit 3 years later after, and just denounced that, has spent the rest of his career fighting them. And just recently, just a few years back, they finally started putting people back on council because, I don't want to get into autism speak. That's a very unfortunate situation, I'll put it that way. But among actual disabled activists as a whole, not all agree. The idea is something called person-first language, and that is saying somebody in autistic person, using autistic or disabled, like you would use an adjective. Like any other adjective you'd use to describe a person, or you would use to describe an identity. And, the joke is, what do you think of someone if they referred to you, if they talked about people with womanhood or people with blackness? What does that say about womanhood or blackness? And, it
charitably, if I was giving them the benefit of the doubt, I would charitably say, because you are a woman or black does not mean you're not a person.
That's so the thing about the identity first language push is that the whole point is you're trying to point out that people are seeing disabled people as inherently less because they are disabled, and person first language just tries to separate people from disability, and you can't do that. That's not actually how disability works. You can't make it go away unless you can cure it, and lots of disabilities can't be cured. So, you think that I've mentioned earlier.
I'm always reminded of my cousin Curtis, who is adopted. Curtis has fetal alcohol syndrome. Curtis does not realize there is anything wrong with him. Curtis will never realize there is anything wrong with him. Curtis will live his life happy and carefree. And every time I think of someone with disability, I don't think of myself as having a disability unless it's really interfering with my life. But when I think of disabled people, I think of Curtis, and I know that's a problem of mine.
But the thing about disabilities is that you can't treat disabled people as a group unless you're willing to acknowledge that disability exists. And that's something that people just don't want to do. People are really afraid of disabled people, on a deep level, either being disabled themselves or they believe a lot of people will, whether they admit to it or not, will think of Sylvie that we just saw when they think of disabled people. And
well, for me, and this might make you angry, and a shame thing I have always felt. When I was in high school, we had a disabled class. I was not in it because I was not that disabled. but it had a number of people who had physical deformities, and I will forever remember every time they walked past feeling uncomfortable and then bad that I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah. That is a cultural complex that we have as a culture, but are nowhere near facing and overcoming. But we're at least some of us are starting to actually draw attention to it, and that's that like it's barely progress, but at least it's something.
Okay, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed our little talk. Next time we will probably be doing the rest of the Demir Ranch. Goodbye.